Today's book is one that I am certain is going to stir up controversy the more it is read, because it goes right to the beating heart of Reformed theology, to reveal that Reformed theology has entirely missed the heart of God with relation to those made in God's image. The heart of Reformed theology is their interpretation of Paul's epistle to the Romans. From Augustine to Luther to Calvin to Zwingli and on to the present, Romans, and especially Romans 9 through 11, along with a dash of mistranslation in Romans 5:12, serves as the heart of the Reformed view of God and the gospel. And Dr. Allen demonstrates in a multitude of ways in his latest work that Reformed theology, instead of shining a light on Romans, has taken Romans captive in order to support a man-made philosophy that is foreign to Paul's purposes in writing Romans. His book, Liberating Romans from Reformed Captivity, a critical evaluation of Calvinism's interpretation of Paul's letters, this is a wonderful work. Overall, to expose the faulty foundations of Reformed theology and to reveal how this viewpoint mishandles Paul's letter. And even if Allen takes us on a journey that doesn't follow the path that I would take, there's still a lot of really good stuff in this book. So I would prefer for this book to start exactly how it does, begin right at the beginning with that influence of Augustine, bringing novel views into the church, which come largely from Neoplatonism with a dash of Manichaeism into our doctrine. That's where you need to start. But then Allen structures his work around the 5 points of TULIP: total depravity, unconditional election, limited atonement, irresistible grace, and the perseverance of the saints, to reveal you can't find those teachings in Romans. In fact, Romans very often teaches the opposite of those views when you look at the book from the right perspective. But to me, structuring the book in that format at times makes it feel a little disjointed. I would have preferred for Allen to just walk through all of Romans chapter by chapter and provide somewhat of a commentary on the book that exegeted each passage to expose where Reformed presuppositions chained and trapped the meanings of Paul's words in order to make them say something that Paul never intended. Now, I think the same basic material would have been presented if he used that format overall, although Allen probably would have spent a little bit longer on Romans chapter 3, the first half of it. I think I just would have preferred that format overall, even if the same basic content was there. Because what you find in this book is still really good. And also, one of the things I love about this book is Allen has plenty of citations from both well-known Calvinists in order to allow them to speak for themselves, and also from some of the best critics of Reformed teaching. So if you have a few minutes, I would like to tell you a little bit more regarding David Allen's work, Liberating Romans from Reformed Captivity. Welcome to Rev Reads. If you want to discover more books about the gracious gospel of Jesus Christ, please subscribe to the channel to stay up to date with my latest book review. Also, like this video, share it with as many people as possible online. Please let them know about the work of David Allen. And I want to say a really big thank you to the Buy Me a Coffee members. It is your support that allows me to cover all those costs that keep coming up with Rev Reads so I can continue to produce these reviews. And if you've benefited from the channel, I would love for you to consider supporting it at a beginning membership of only $3 a month. So one of the things I really want to highlight about this book is the attention that Allen gives in the footnotes and the quotations to some of my favorite writers who also cover this topic. That is Adam Harwood, Jonathan Williams, Ken Wilson, John Lennox, and Ali Bonner. It was great to see their works referenced throughout the book, especially Jonathan Williams, who I think, while the other people I mentioned get brought up more in this movement that's shining a light on the errors of Calvinism, I really want more people to know about the writings of Jonathan Williams, especially on Esau and the Edomites. Now, the beginning of this book, where Allen covers the teachings of Augustine, Luther, Edwards, and others with regards to God's will or his sovereignty was excellent. In fact, I think a lot of Calvinists would do well to learn more about this foundation of Reformed theology in God's sovereignty, because I don't think a lot of Calvinists really know what the most famous and well-respected Reformed theologians, men like Edwards and Zwingli, taught on this topic. They were very clear. In their view, God is the author of sin, because they taught that every choice, every action of man, it only occurs because it was first the will of God. Now, many in the Reformed camp try to massage that message, to soften that teaching on God's sovereignty. But to be a Reformed teacher who believes, like R.C. Sproul, that there are no rogue molecules, it means that God decrees and ordains. God makes it so that only one possible choice, only one possible action a person can make for every single choice in their life. The only thing you can ever choose is what God decreed for you to do. This is the foundation of Reformed theology. It's a view that, in my opinion, replaces God's love for God's control. It was a really good work exposing the historical foundation which Reformed theology brings to Romans. Now, the best of the 5 chapters that cover the heart of the book, where Alan looks at Romans through the framework of Tulip, the best of those chapters is definitely the chapter on unconditional election. I would go as far as to say is that if this book was only those 75 pages of that chapter alone, the book still would have been excellent, because there was so much packed into that chapter. Alan begins with a really good examination on Romans 8, 28 through 30, where he demonstrates that this is about those who love God, those who are foreknown because they're in a relationship with God. The golden chain is not about an elect group of people who were chosen to one day believe in their lives, but the chain is about those who are already in a loving relationship where they are known by God in fellowship. And then to add to that, there's just no evidence in the context that Paul is creating this linking chain that is meant to show a chronological 4-step path from predestination to glorification in verse 30. The whole idea that predestination, then calling, then justification, and then glorification are 4 links in a chronological chain, that just doesn't come from anywhere in the passage. And it doesn't show that all of that begins first with those who believe in Christ, and then the rest start. Then you really get to the best part of that chapter, where Alan walks the reader through Romans 9 through 11. There's just so much that Reformed theology gets wrong in that short space of those 3 chapters. And Alan shows that most of their faulty views on Romans 9 is based on viewing Romans 9 as a systematic theology, a systematic description of how each individual is eternally elected by God for salvation, or eternally elected by God for reprobation. When the truth is, Romans 9 through 11 is actually teaching the opposite. Paul is not writing on how Jews were chosen for damnation, while Gentiles were chosen for salvation. He is writing that election. The Jews being the chosen people, this didn't guarantee their salvation. Election did not result in salvation, but instead it is faith in Christ which results in salvation. And this is why Paul pleads for his Jewish brothers to believe in Romans 10 in order to be saved. Alan demonstrates that even the parable of the potter in Romans chapter 9, it calls the reader back to Jeremiah 18, which teaches that God, as the potter, has the right to teach Israel, his chosen people, however he sees fit. If Israel rebels, he will make them into a pot for dishonor. If Israel repents and turns back to him, then he will make them into a vessel of honor. This is not about election to salvation, but it's about how Israel's elect status as the chosen people through which the Messiah will come, that election doesn't guarantee that they will be a vessel of honor based on that choice. The Jews, in the same way as the nations, we all must believe in Christ for salvation. And there were several times where Alan points out that it just seems like in the Reformed interpretation of Romans 9 through 11, the interpreters have simply forgotten the importance of faith in Christ that was outlined earlier in the book in Romans 3 and 4. So I got to say, while this book wasn't structured in the format that I would have preferred, I still found this book to be insightful throughout. And I would say, especially, this book is just chocked full of these really wonderful moments that wrestle directly with the writings and the views of the Reformed in their own words, and then also uses some really good resources of others that I have also strongly recommended on my channel. Actually, there were several points while I was reading through this, looking at the footnotes and the citations, where I was like, this is like Rev Reed's greatest hits, sprinkled all throughout the book. So I want to say thank you so much to Dr. David Allen for another really good work that is biblically based, that has great treatment of the text, and that defends the glory of the gospel and the beauty of God's love for all those made in his image.